The Letters of Vincent van Gogh, to Theodorus van Gogh and Anna van Gogh Carbentus, Ramsgate, Monday, 17th of April, 1876. Dear Father and Mother, by now you've no doubt received the telegram, but we're wanting to know more particulars. I wrote down a few things in the train and am sending you that so you can see how my trip went. Friday. We want to stay together today. Which would be better? The joy of seeing each other again, or the sadness of parting? We've often parted from each other already, though this time there was more sorrow than before, on both sides. But courage as well, from the firmer faith in and greater need for blessing.
And wasn't it as though nature sympathised with us? It was so grey and rather dismal a couple of hours ago. Now, I look over rolling pastures, and everything is so quiet, and the sun is setting behind the grey clouds, and throws a golden glow across the land.
How much we long for each other those first hours after parting, which you're spending in the church, and I in the station and the train, and how much we think of the others too, of Theo, and of Anna, and of other sisters, and of little brother. We just passed Zevenbergen, and I thought of the day you took me there, and I stood on Mr. Proverly's steps and watched your carriage driving away down the wet street. And then the evening when my father came to visit me for the first time, and that first homecoming at Christmas.
Saturday and Sunday. How much I thought of Anna on the boat. Everything there reminded me of our journey together. The weather was clear, and on the Maze especially it was beautiful, although the view from the sea of the dunes gleaming white in the sun. The last thing one saw of Holland was a small grey tower. I stayed on deck until sunlight, but then it grew cold and dismal. The next morning, in the train from Harwich to London, it was beautiful to see, in the morning twilight, the black fields and the green pastures with sheep and lambs, and here and there a hedge of thorn bushes, and a few large oak trees with dark branches and grey, moss-covered trunks. The blue, twilit sky, still with a few stars, and a bank of grey clouds above the horizon. Even before the sun rose, I heard a lark. When we arrived at the last station, before London, the sun rose. The bank of grey clouds had disappeared, and there was the sun, so simple and as big as possible, a real Easter sun. The grass was sparkling with dew and night frost. And yet, I prefer that grey hour when we parted. Saturday afternoon I stayed on deck until the sun was down. The water was quite dark blue as far as one could see, with rather high waves with white crests. The coast had already disappeared from view. The sky was light blue, burnished and without a cloud, and the sun went down and cast a streak of dazzling light on the water. It was a truly grand and majestic sight, and yet simpler, quieter things moved one so much more deeply. For now I couldn't help shuddering, and thought of the night in the stuffy saloon with smoking and singing passengers.
A train was leaving for Ramsgate 2 hours after my arrival in London. That's another train ride of 4.5 hours. It's a beautiful ride. We passed, among other things, a hilly region. The hills have a sparse covering of grass at the bottom and oak woods on the top. It's very similar to our dunes. Between those hills lay a village with a grey church covered in ivy, like most of the houses. The orchards were in blossom, and the sky was a light blue with grey and white clouds. We also came past Canterbury, a town which still has lots of medieval buildings, in particular a splendid church with old elm trees around it. Often already I've seen something of this town in paintings, You can imagine how I sat looking out of the window, watching well ahead of my time in Ramsgate. I arrived at Mr. Stokes around 1 o'clock. He was away from home, but will be coming back this evening. During his absence, his place was taken by his son, 23 years old, I think, a schoolmaster in London. I saw Mrs. Stokes this afternoon at table. There are 24 boys between the ages of 10 and 14. It was a fine sight seeing those 24 boys eating. So the school isn't large. The window looks out onto the sea. After eating, we went for a walk by the sea. It's beautiful there. The houses on the sea are mostly built of yellow brick in a simple Gothic style and have gardens full of cedars and other dark evergreen shrubs. There's a harbour full of ships, closed in by stone jetties on which one can walk. And further out one sees the sea in its natural state, and that's beautiful. Yesterday everything was grey. In the evening we went to church with the boys. On the wall of the church was written, "Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world." The boys go to bed at 8 o'clock and get up at 6. There's another assistant teacher, 17 years old. He, 4 boys and I sleep in another house close by, where I have a small room which wants some prints on the wall. And now enough for today. What a good time we had together. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Many regards to Lise, Albertine and little brother. And in thought, a handshake from your loving Vincent. Thanks for your letters which just arrived. More soon when I've been here a few days and have seen Mr. Stokes.
To Theo van Gogh, Ramsgate, Friday, 21st of April, 1876. My dear Theo, enclosed you'll find a post office order for 10 shillings. Be so good as to place the enclosed advertisement for Anna for that amount in some newspaper or other. You decide which one. If it's not enough, I'll send you the rest, and if it's too much, buy some photograph or other for Eton for 21st of May. But in any event, please tell me how much you pay for the advertisement. I do want to have the address as it may be of further use. I hope so much that Anna will find something. Wilhelmine will be going home soon now. Mr. Stokes didn't come back until today. He's a rather large man with a bald head and whiskers. The boys seem to respect him, yet love him all the same. He was already playing marbles with them only a couple of hours after he got back. We go to the beach often. This morning I helped the boys build a sandcastle, like those we made in the garden at Zundert.
How much I'd like you to be able to look through the school window. The house stands on a square. All the houses around here are the same, which is often the case here. In the middle of the square, a large green, closed in by an iron fence and surrounded by lilac bushes. The boys play during the midday break. The house where I have my room is on the same square. When I was in Rotterdam and saw that I'd have to wait there a long time, I very nearly came to The Hague, even went to the station, and yet I didn't do it. I hope that later I'll be able to see everyone and everything there again with a calmer eye. Saying farewell at home on Good Friday is something I won't forget. In the morning we went to the Hoven together to attend church and the Lord's Supper. And Father said there, "Arise, let us go hence." And in the afternoon we did arise. And through the small window I saw Pa and little brother in the road, watching the train leave. And Sunday afternoon I was in the church in Ramsgate and was struck by the words written on the wall, which you'll find in Anna's letter, enclosed for you to read, but send it back. Regards to everyone at the Rooses, and to anyone else who might ask for me. Also to Borchers, if you run into him. Do you still go there now and then? I shake your hand in thought, and ever, your loving brother, Vincent. To Theo van Gogh, Ramsgate, Friday, 28 April 1876. My dear Theo, many happy returns. My hearty congratulations on this day. May our love for each other only increase as we get older. I'm so happy that we have so much in common. Not only memories of the past, but also that you're working for the same firm I work for until now, and therefore know so many people and places that I know too. And that you love nature and art so much. You'll have received the letter containing Anna's advertisement in good order. There's also an advertisement in the Daily News. Now we can only hope that something will come of it. Mr. Stokes told me that he intends to move after the holidays, with the whole school, naturally, to a village on the Thames, around 3 hours from London. He would then furnish the school somewhat differently and perhaps expand it. Now let me tell you about a walk we took yesterday. It was to an inlet of the sea, and the road to it led through fields of young wheat and along hedgerows of hawthorn and etc. When we got there, we had on our left a high, steep wall of sand and stone, as high as a 2-storey house, on top of which stood old gnarled hawthorn bushes. Their black or grey lichen-covered stems and branches had all been bent by the same side, by the wind. Also a few elder bushes. The ground we walked on was completely covered with large stones, chalk and shells. To the right, the sea, as calm as a pond, reflecting the delicate grey sky where the sun was setting. It was ebb tide and the water was very low. Thanks for your letter of yesterday. I think it is very nice that Willem Valkis will be joining the branch. Give him my particular regards. I'd like to walk with you both sometime through the Bosjes to Scheveningen. Have a pleasant day today, and give my regards to everyone who asks after me. And believe me, your loving brother, Vincent.
I wish you well today, old boy, and begin a happy and blessed year. These are important years for us both, years on which much already depends. May everything turn out well. I'll be glad when Anna has found something, but situations like the one she's looking for are rather scarce. A sickly lady here who needed someone to look after her received 300 replies to her advertisement. I shake your hand heartedly in thought. Adieu. To Theo Van Gogh, Ramsgate, Saturday, 6th of May, 1876. My dear Theo, herewith you'll find the 2 books I promised you. I've marked a few things in them, but you'll certainly find many beautiful things in addition to these. As I wrote to you already though, one starts to grow especially fond of them when one lives in the country itself. It's already Saturday evening again. The weather's beautiful today. The sea is very calm, and it's low tide at the moment. The sky is a delicate, whitish blue with a haze in the distance. Early this morning, it was also beautiful. Everything was clear, where now it's more or less hazy. This town has something very singular. One notices the sea in everything. But you know this special quality too, because one finds it in The Hague and in Scheveningen as well. Did you know that Anna has received an answer to her advertisements? This week, she sent me 3 letters she'd received. I'm longing to hear what she's decided. One letter came from Amsterdam, a situation as a companion to an old lady. Another letter was from Wales, and yet another from here in England. She may have received even more since then.
She seems awfully eager for an opportunity to come into contact with families. In Amsterdam, she would find this at once through Uncle Cor and Uncle Stricker. Do you still visit Uncle Cor every now and then? Sometimes I long to see him so much. Just yesterday I wrote to him. Keep him as your friend. There can't be any harm in that. Sometime you must tell Mr. Testeeg about the school here. These are really happy days, the ones I'm spending here, day after day. And yet it's a happiness and peacefulness that I don't trust entirely, though one thing can lead to another. A person isn't easily satisfied. One moment he finds things are far too good, and the next he's not satisfied. But I'm saying this by the by. We would do better not to talk about it, but rather continue quietly on our way. Have a good Sunday morning, and give my regards to everyone at the Rooses, and also to Mr. and Mr. Testeig and Betsy. And in thought, a handshake from your loving brother, Vincent. To Theo Van Gogh, Ramsgate, Friday, 12th of May, 1876. My dear Theo, thanks for your letter. I also like Tell Me the Old Story very much. I first heard it sung in Paris in the evening in a small church I used to attend sometimes. There's such a yearning for a religion among the people in those big cities. Many a worker in a factory or shop had a remarkable, pure, pious youth. But city life often takes away the early dew of the morning, yet the yearning for the old story remains. The bottom of one's heart remains the bottom of one's heart. In one of his books, Eliot describes the life of factory workers and etc., who have joined a small community and hold religious services in a chapel in Lantern Yard, and he says it is God's kingdom upon earth.
And there's something moving about seeing the thousands now flocking to hear those evangelists. I think your plan to give Pa and Ma after the departure by Sadie is very good. That's agreed then. Wilhelmine may already be there on the 21st of May. I see from your letter that you're also thinking of going. Do it, old boy, if you can manage it. Sometimes such actions receive a special blessing. How it would surprise them. There was something wistful in Ma's last letter, in which she wrote a word or two about the necessity of our being so far from home. Ma's eyes are hurting her again. Come on, old boy. Brighten them up again by being there on that day. This afternoon, Mr. Reed sent me to the catalogue of the exhibition in London. In thought, a handshake and congratulations on the birthdays of Lees and Core, and also on the 21st of May. Regards to everyone at the Rooses. In haste, your loving brother, Vincent. To Theo Van Gogh, Ramsgate, Wednesday, 31st of May, 1876. My dear Theo, bully for you being in Eton on the 21st of May. Happily, there were 4 of the 6 at home. Pa wrote to me in detail about everything that happened that day. Thanks too for your last letter. Have I already written to you about the storm I saw recently? The sea was yellowish, especially close to the beach. A streak of light on the horizon, and above this, tremendously huge, dark clouds, from which one saw the rain coming down in slanting streaks. The wind blew the dust from the small white path on the rocks into the sea, and tossed the blossoming hawthorn bushes and wallflowers that grow on the rocks. On the right, fields of young green wheat, and in the distance, the town with its towers, mills, slate roofs and houses built in Gothic style. And below, the harbour between the 2 jetties running out into the sea, looking like the cities Albrecht Dürer used to etch.
That same night, I looked out of the window of my room onto the roofs of the houses one sees from there, and the tops of the elms, dark against the night sky. Above those roofs, one single star, but a nice, big, friendly one. And I thought of us all, and I thought of the years of my life that had already passed, and of our home. And the words and feelings came to me. Keep me from being a son that causeth shame. Give me your blessing, not because I deserve it, but for my mother's sake. Thou art love, beareth all things. Without your constant blessing, we can do nothing. Herewith a little drawing of the view from the school window where the boys stand and watch their parents going back to the station after a visit. Many a boy will never forget the view from that window. You should have seen it this week when we had rainy days, especially in the twilight, when the street lamps are being lit and their light is reflected in the wet street. Mr. Stokes was sometimes moody on those days, and when the boys were too boisterous for him, it sometimes happened that they didn't get their bread and tea in the evening. You should have seen them then, standing at the window looking out. It was really rather sad. They have so little apart from their food and drink to look forward to and get them through the day. The youngsters are making an oil stain on your little drawing. Forgive them. Herewith a few words for Uncle Jen. And now, good night. If anyone should ask after me, bid them good day. Do you still visit Borchers once in a while? Give him my regards if you see him, and also Willem Valkis, and everyone at the Rooses. A handshake in thought from your loving Vincent. To Theo van Gogh, Welwyn, Saturday, 17th of June, 1876. My dear Theo, last Monday I left Ramsgate for London. That's a long walk indeed, and when I left it was awfully hot, and it remained so until the evening, when I arrived at Canterbury. That same evening I walked a bit further until I came to a couple of large beeches and elms next to a small pond, where I rested for a while. In the morning, at 3:30, the birds began to sing upon seeing the sight of morning twilight, and I continued on my way. It was good to walk then. In the afternoon I arrived at Chatham, where, in the distance, past partly flooded, low-lying meadows, with elms here and there, one sees the Thames, full of ships. It's always grey weather there, I think. There I met a cart that brought me a couple of miles further. But then the driver went into an inn, and I thought he might stay there for a long time. So I walked on, and arrived towards evening in the well-known suburbs of London, and walked on towards the city down the long, long roads. I stayed in London for 2 days, and often ran from one end of the city to the other in order to see various people, including a minister whom I'd written. Herewith a translation of the letter. I'm sending it to you because you should know the feeling I have as I start out is, Father, I am not worthy, and Father, be merciful. Should I find anything, it will probably be a situation somewhere between minister and missionary in the suburbs of London among working folk. Don't speak about this to anyone, Theo. My salary at Mr. Stokes's will be very small. Probably only board and lodging, and some free time in which to teach. Or, if there's no free time, at most £20 a year.
But to continue, I spent one night at Mr. Reed's and next at Mr. Gladwell's, where they were very, very kind. Mr. Gladwell kissed me goodnight, and that did me good. May it be granted me sometime in the future to show some more friendship to his son every now and then. I wanted to leave for Welwyn that evening, but they literally held me back by force because of the pouring rain. However, when it had let up, somewhat around 4 in the morning, I set out for Welwyn. First, a long walk from one end of the city to the other, something like 10 miles, each taking 20 minutes. In the afternoon at 5, I was with our sister, and was very glad to see her. She looked well, and you would be pleased with her room as I am, with Good Friday, Christ in the Garden of Olives, and Mater Dolorosa, etc., with ivy around them instead of frames. Old boy, when you read my letter to the minister, you'll perhaps say, he's not so bad after all, though in fact he is. Think of him as he is, however, every once in a while. A handshake in thought from your loving brother, Vincent.
Reverend Sir, a clergyman's son who, because he must work to earn a living, has no money and no time to study at King's College, and who, besides that, is already a couple of years older than is usual for someone studying there, and has not even begun on the preparatory studies of Latin and Greek, would, in spite of everything, dearly like to find a situation connected with the church, even though the position of a clergyman who has had college training is beyond his reach. My father was a clergyman in a village in Holland. When I was 11 years old, I started going to school and stayed there until I was 16. At the time, I had to choose a profession. Through the offices of one of my uncles, an associate in the firm of Gogh & Co., art dealers and publishers of engravings, I was given a position in his branch at The Hague. I worked for the firm for 3 years. From there, I went to London to learn English, and after 2 years from there to Paris. Forced by various circumstances to quit the firm, however, I left Messrs. G & Co. and have since taught for 2 months at Mr. Stokes' school in Ramsgate. As my goal is a situation connected with the church, however, I must look further. Although I have not been trained for the church, perhaps my past life of travelling, living in various countries, associating with a variety of people, rich and poor, religious and not religious, working at a variety of jobs, days of manual labour in between the days of office work, etc. Perhaps also my speaking various languages will compensate in part for my lack of formal training. But what I should prefer to give as my reason for commending myself to you is my innate love of the church, and that which concerns the church, which has at times lain dormant, though it has awakened repeatedly and, if I may say so, despite feelings of great inadequacy and shortcoming, the love of God and of humankind. And also, when I think of my past life and of my father's house in that Dutch village, a feeling of, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as though one of thy hired servants. Be merciful to me.
When I was living in London, I often attended your church, and I have not forgotten you. Now, I am asking you for a recommendation in my search for a situation.
And to keep a fatherly eye on me should I find such a situation. I have been left very much to myself. I believe that your fatherly eye could do me good, now that the early dew of morning has passed away at noon.
Thanking you in advance for whatever you may be willing to do for me. Vincent.